Aye. So let me take you right into the mood of the moment, because there's something special bubbling around Celtic just now, even in a weekend without a match on the horizon. The international break might have emptied the calendar, but it certainly hasn't emptied the excitement, especially for the Irish lads tuning in who must have woken up with a grin stretched from ear to ear after that brilliant 2-0 triumph over Portugal. You could almost feel the energy pouring out of the Aviva, that buzzing, restless roar that just sweeps you up even if you're only watching the highlights later on. It's a cracking arena, the kind of place that just feels alive on nights like that. And you cannot help but imagine how different things would be if a Scottish side had a similar setting for big matches, or if Celtic Cup semis and finals were staged in a ground with that kind of natural lift. It makes you dream a wee bit, I'll no lie. But focusing on Celtic connections, Liam Scales certainly grabbed attention with the shift he put in. Playing out on the left wing, back slot in a system that can be ruthless if you take a second too long, he stuck to the task brilliantly. A wee rocky start against some of the technical Portuguese talent, but he settled, pushed through, won his battles, and even nodded on the assist for the opener. For a player who's been moved around at club level, seeing him handle that responsibility so confidently will make folk wonder if he might end up being Celtic's second choice at left back, while Marcelo Serra's still out. Hayato and Amura are there as options, but you get the sense the coaching staff might trust Scales' defensive instincts a bit more for now, especially with some heavy fixtures looming. And fair play as well to Johnny Kenny. Even though he never got off the bench, these camps are gold dust for a young lad learning the ropes. Back at Celtic Park, the story everyone's chewing over is still the hunt for the new manager. It has dragged on, and it feels like the club is inching toward a decision rather than marching confidently in one direction. Normally by now you'd have one journalist dropping the bombshell hint that tells you everything. But it just hasn't come, and maybe that's because Celtic genuinely haven't reached their final call yet. Paul Tisdale seems to be the one leading the recruitment groundwork this time around. It's different from previous searches where everything stayed tight to the boardroom, and one senior figure all but whispered the final answer. This time, you can almost feel an extra layer of structure being added, though at the end of the day, everyone knows how the final decision goes. Dermot Desmond will sit down with the chosen candidate, get a read on them, and he'll go off that instinct he trusts maybe more than anything else. History shows he gets it right more often than he gets it wrong, which is probably part of why the club leans so heavily into that approach. Wilfried Nancy, though, his name is floating in the air more than any other right now. He handled his press conference over in the States with that calm, diplomatic tone that told you nothing, but also refused to shut anything down. He kept it straight. The focus is the team, not rumors. And sitting beside him, the Columbus Crew general manager basically confirmed he's under contract and the club is already planning ahead for next season. That alone tells you Celtic wouldn't get near him without paying compensation. Still, plenty of folk have noticed he hasn't denied interest, hasn't said he's staying, hasn't given the solid no that ends speculation. It's the kind of quiet non-answer managers give when something's happening behind the scenes, but nothing's final enough to speak about. And to make it even more intriguing, almost every single name Celtic have been linked with is working elsewhere. It's unusual, because the club rarely poaches managers from active posts. It happened with Ange, of course, but generally Celtic go for someone either already free or easier to extract. So the idea of approaching managers like Nancy or even Kieran McKenna means stepping into a slightly different world. McKenna has already faced questions at length and, like Nancy, stayed away from giving anything meaningful away. Then you hear talk of others, like Cheeto Knudsen up at Bodo Glimt. But realistically, it's hard to see him leaving that ideal setup to come into something far more chaotic at Celtic. The lifestyle, the control, the environment, they're worlds apart. Same goes for other unlikely names floating about. Some sound like noise, some sound like old connections being dragged back up because fans recognize them. But deep down you can sense the pool is thinner than it seems. So here we are, waiting. It's Friday the 14th of November, and 1 week from today Celtic will hold the annual general meeting at the stadium. There's part of me that reckons the board might prefer walking into that meeting with a new manager already chosen, just so they're not hammered with the same questions from every direction. But there's another part that wonders if they actually benefit from the distraction, because then the focus is pulled away from the bigger cracks supporters are desperate to address. Whatever way it goes, that AGM is shaping up to be more interesting than usual, even if it still ends up following the same pattern where folk expect fireworks and instead get something a bit more flat than feared. Right. So carrying on from where things were left simmering, the talk around the AGM has taken on a life of its own, mainly because supporters know fine well that this meeting is more than just folk asking about pies, turnstiles, and season ticket queues. There's a deeper frustration pulsing through the support, and you can feel it every time someone mentions the board, the direction of the club, or the way certain decisions have been handled over the past few years. You see it online, you hear it outside the stadium after matches, and you certainly hear it on away days where people speak a bit more freely. This AGM notice that the club released has only sharpened the focus, because once you sift past the formal language and all the usual legal terminology, you start to see the heart of the matter. People are demanding clarity, and they want a proper plan for the next handful of years instead of stumbling through each season with a sense of patchwork solutions. When you look through the resolutions, the first chunk of them feels like the predictable routine you get every single year. Names put forward, board members up for reappointment, the whole thing wrapped up in the comfortable rhythm of business as usual. And even though a good chunk of the support is fed up with some of these figures, the numbers behind the scenes make it almost impossible for anything to actually change in those votes. The majority holders have enough power to push those decisions through without so much as blinking. So while fans might voice their anger or disappointment, the official result is almost always the same. You get the sense that some folk already know how these votes will go before they even sit down in the hall, which only adds to the feeling that the AGM is more of a formality than a genuine moment of accountability. But then you get to those later resolutions, the shareholder requisitions, and that's where the pulse really quickens a wee bit. Those ones didn't come from the board. They were forced onto the agenda by supporters who met the criteria, and that alone tells you how strongly people feel about the current direction. The call for a strategic review is something supporters have been shouting about for ages. People want a clear 3 to 5 year football plan, with proper targets, proper structure, proper investment, and, crucially, proper accountability. Linking remuneration to actual achievement makes perfect sense when you think about it, because too often it feels like the rewards stay the same whether the club has smashed it financially but fallen short on the pitch, or done brilliantly on the pitch but made questionable choices behind the scenes. A real plan could change that whole dynamic. And the no confidence resolution, well, that's the one that has sparked the most discussion. It's rare to see something like that formally make its way onto an AGM agenda, and it reflects the frustration bubbling across the support right now. When fans reference multiple poor transfer windows, the lack of visible progress in stadium development, weak communication, and the broken relationship between board and fans, they're not doing it for drama. They're saying it because they live and breathe the club every week, and they can see the drift happening. They're worried that the gap between what Celtic could be and what Celtic currently are is widening instead of closing. They're tired of feeling like the club is being run with a short-term mindset every time summer comes, and we scramble late in the window, waiting for cut-price deals instead of pushing aggressively for genuine quality early. That accumulation of irritation has led directly to this moment where a chunk of shareholders are openly saying they don't trust the leadership anymore. Even if that resolution doesn't pass, and let's be honest, the voting structure makes it unlikely, the message it sends is powerful. It shows the board that supporters have reached a point where they're no longer willing to simply accept explanations and half-answers. They want a shift, not a shrug. And it forces the club into a place where ignoring these concerns becomes much harder, even if they try to soften the surface as they usually do with polished statements and safe talking points. Away from the AGM storm, there's another wee subplot worth keeping an eye on, and that's the continuing debate around alcohol in Scottish stadiums. Aberdeen being granted permission to trial pre-match sales might seem like a small footnote in the news cycle, but it actually carries a lot more weight than it appears. Alcohol has been banned in grounds since the early 1980s, and for many supporters, that restriction belongs to a totally different era. The new trial is limited and controlled, only before the match, only in the concourse, no viewing of the pitch, but it still represents a tiny shift forward. Even that is enough to stir optimism, because once you get one top-flight club testing something, it becomes easier for others to argue for similar trials. You hear fans talking about the matchday experience in other countries, especially Germany, where being able to have a drink in a fan park or within the stadium before the match creates a relaxed, communal atmosphere rather than the tension folk sometimes expect here. Nobody's asking for chaos. Nobody's asking for anything wild. People just want the option to enjoy a beer before a normal match without being treated like they're seconds away from tearing up the stadium. Of course, the tricky part is that every time a government official is asked about this, they seem to shut the door immediately, almost like they're terrified of what might happen. But then you get trials like this one popping up, and it sends mixed signals. One side is saying it's possible, and the other is still clinging to fears from 40 years ago. It's hard to know which direction things will move in, but at least progress is being whispered again rather than buried. Meanwhile, Celtic supporters are still glued to every wee rumor about the managerial situation. Every whisper gets amplified, every vague comment in a press conference gets dissected. There's a weird sense of calm and chaos happening at the same time. Calm, because the club is moving slowly and keeping everything close to their chest. Chaos, because supporters are restless and desperate for clarity. You can feel the tension in the discussion. Some folk are convinced the club already knows the direction it's heading, but is keeping it quiet. Others think they're still undecided, still interviewing, still weighing options. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. What makes it all even more intense is the fact that this decision will shape the next few seasons, not just the next few months. Whoever comes in will have to deal with expectations that never drop, a squad with potential but also gaps, and a support that has grown tired of feeling like Celtic react instead of lead. So as the days tick down toward the AGM and the search continues in the background, the feeling around the club is heavy with anticipation. Every conversation seems to circle back to the same questions. Who's coming in? What direction are we taking? And when will the silence finally break? And until that moment arrives, supporters are left watching every hint, every interview, every rumor, trying to pull together a picture of what's really going on behind those closed doors at Celtic Park. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The Celtic Park terraces are buzzing with a new kind of excitement these days, and it's all centered around a familiar face donning the iconic green and white hoops. Billy Gilmore, once the bright prospect of Scottish football and a midfield wizard at Chelsea, has been spotted sporting the No.8 jersey for Celtic, and the whispers among the supporters are growing louder with each passing week. "He's the new Modric," one fan shouted from the stand, and it seems the sentiment is spreading like wildfire across social media and the pubs of Glasgow alike. Gilmore's arrival, still wrapped in a hint of mystery as the club remains tight-lipped about official announcements, has ignited a flurry of speculation. Has the young Scot finally found the stage where his talents can shine without the shadows of Premier League giants looming overhead? Observers are pointing to his composure on the ball, the silky passes threaded through congested midfields, and the uncanny ability to control tempo that has fans reminiscing about Luka Modric at his prime. It's not just about the skills, though. It's the aura of leadership, the calm authority he exudes in a Celtic jersey that has the hoops faithful daring to dream big. Across the city, conversations in bars and around training pitches suggest a growing belief that Gilmore could transform the midfield, becoming the fulcrum of Celtic's ambitions both domestically and in Europe. The rumor mill is spinning at full tilt, with speculation about how this signing might alter the club's tactical approach. Could Celtic be reshaping their entire midfield philosophy around a player who, not long ago, was being hailed as one of Scotland's brightest hopes? The parallels drawn to Modric are, of course, perhaps a touch premature, but in the hearts of fans, the image of Gilmore orchestrating attacks with precision and elegance has already taken root. What's undeniable is the excitement bubbling through the stands. Supporters are donning scarves, sharing clips, and imagining a future where the Celtic midfield is a symphony conducted by one of their own. The whispers are no longer just whispers, they're chants, growing in volume every time Gilmore touches the ball. Whether it's true genius or just the intoxicating effect of hope, one thing is certain. The Celtic faithful have found their new muse in Billy Gilmore, and the rumors show no sign of slowing down. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.